I want to talk about a few transformation techniques in Adobe Illustrator and then show a few ways of making the repetitive composition perhaps a little more dynamic. I'm going to start out with a simple square. I'm going to hold down the Shift key, drag out a square, move it up a little bit here. First thing I want to do is just talk about basic transformations. You can always just scale shapes in Adobe Illustrator. If you go off the corner and get the rotate icon, you can rotate the objects. This is all pretty easy to do. If you want to do that by the numbers, you can use either the Object Transform menu, where you can go in, move, rotate, reflect, scale. If you go into one of these, you get a dialog box where you can go in and put in specific numbers for these things. Of course, if you just want to do things by the number, you can go in to the Transform dialog here and put in XY location, width and height, rotation, shear, and apply all those things there also. Yet another way of transforming things is to use the tool for that. There's a rotate tool, a scale tool, a shear tool, reshape tool, and a reflect tool. One of the things these tools allow you to do, which is useful, is to specify a different transformation point for the transformation. If I click outside of this object, I now have a transformation point out here, and I can then rotate around a point that is not the center of the object. It is not the center of the object and is also not one of the 9 points that you normally get to transform around. A variation on this is to Alt-click. That sets a transformation point, but also brings up a dialog box where I can put in a specific angle. If I wanted to rotate this 30 degrees around this point, I could type that in. I could preview it, see how far it's moving. Perhaps do a copy, Control D, to repeat it around. Now this kind of overlapping situation is something that I will address at another time. Okay, I'm going to repeat these around. Select all, move them over here a little bit. One of the things I'd like to do is make this a little more dynamic by changing one of the attributes, like the color. If I open up the layers, you see that I currently have the bottom one. The original one is now on the bottom. I'm going to select them all and remove the stroke and set. I'm going to apply just a very faint gray to these. Now I'm going to find the one that's all the way on the top and make it black. What I want to do is create a range of color from the bottommost to the topmost one to get a more dynamic directional feel to this. What I'm going to do is go into the Edit Colors, and blend front to back, front object to the back object. Deselect, and now even though it's a very symmetrical array, we have a changing color scheme that gives it kind of a more rotational kind of movement to what's going on here. One of the things you can do with Transform Each is apply multiple transformations to something. So if I have a square and go into Transform Each, I can say that I want to scale this 80% horizontally. So I could preview that. It's also applying a rotation at the same time. And I also want to move it, so I'm actually doing 3 different transformations. and then I'm going to be able to do that again. When you transform again, it does the last transformation. This is a way to actually have multiple transformations be applied at once. So I'm going to do a copy here, and then Command D. And you see a constant amount of movement between each one, progressive amount of scaling and rotation to create a pattern. So you have to decide if that is interesting to you. You see that Transform Each potentially applies multiple transformations to objects. There I applied it to one object. If I selected all of these objects, I could apply multiple transformations to each one of these. But what if I wanted to treat this group as a single thing? Well, I actually gave it away when I said group. The shortcut is Control-G, which is what I usually do. And I'm going to go into Transform again. I don't want that transformation. That will do that. Actually, if I repeat that, what does that look like? That's kind of interesting. I'm going to do something a little more, open up Transform Each again. I do want to do scaling. Just going to do 90%. I'm not going to do any movement. This is going to be perfectly concentric. I am going to rotate 10 degrees. If I preview that, you see a little bit of a shift there. Well, let's see how that looks. I'm going to do a copy. So it copied the group, rotated the group, scaled the group. If I repeat that, now I've got a spiraling kind of pattern that I can do many, many times. Okay, so it's a pattern. It's symmetrical because I'm copying and applying transformations and the rotation and scaling. In this case, with the spiral, make it a little more dynamic than just a bunch of boxes, I suppose.